What is hip-hop dance?
Attention. Incredible. Attention. Attention.
The origins of hip hop it's a general question because you're going to come up with all different types of answers. The party jams in the Bronx is the origins of hip hop. Some people are going to say, with the MCs or with the B-boys. It really depends on who you ask and from what walk of life they're coming. We do know that in the language of Wolof, which is spoken in Senegal, the Gambia, that the word hippie, H-I-P-I, or H-E-P-I, means to be aware, to open one's eyes, to be knowledgeable.
Ben Herson, the founder of fair trade record label Nomadic Wax, argues that Africa is the true birthplace of hip-hop, he says. Hip-hop is the missing connection between the U.S. and Africa.
John Leland kicks off his entertaining new book, Hip, The History, with a seductive saying. The word hip derives from the West African language Wolof and was cultivated by slaves from West Africa.
There's just one problem. The etymology is wrong. The origin of hip and its partner hep, the words are related, is unsatisfyingly unknown. The term first appeared at the turn of the 20th century and quickly became widespread. Its meaning at this early point was aware, in the know, and it was not widely used by African Americans.
There is some debate as to whether the origins of the word hip as we now know it come from Wolof language, because there's this gap where some of the scholars are saying that the word hip didn't come around until the early 20s or mid 20s. But be that as it may, whatever the argument is, the definition of the word to me still applies to what we consider hip, which is to be aware of what's going on. So if you had that definition in West Africa in the mid 20s or early 20s with the jazz era, with all the jazz musicians coming up with jive talk, in that they would say that they were hep, H-E-P, and you were a hep cat at one point because you knew what band was hot, what style of clothing was good, what clubs were popular, and so on. To now, we still have the word hip, and even from the 70s, you were a hip person. And with hip hop, you have hop, which in any language that has the word, other than the verb action, it was connected to dance. So for me, when I hear hip hop, I think a knowledgeable person or knowledgeable people coming together in celebration, not just dance, but for hip hop culture.
An era source suggesting that the term hailed from the phrase to have one's hip boots on, which meant to be prepared.
Other unlikely origins. The phrase to be on the hip referred to the customary position of smoking
Hep,
opium.
2, 3, 4.
Obvious problems with the etymology, such as the fact that Wolof does not generally use the letter H, were ignored. The word in question is actually spelled X-I-P-P-I.
It's not exactly what Africa Bambaataa meant when he coined the term hip-hop for the culture, I believe in 81, 82. But you also had other people saying it. Again, you will find the word hop a lot in the 50s when people went to sock hops and on through the 60s. And even with DJ Hollywood and DJ Lovebug Starsky, when it's known to me that when DJ Hollywood was spinning a party, he would have a rhyming cadence, which was something that you heard a lot of DJs do, on back to DJs that would spin the doo-wop records. And I believe it was said that DJ Hollywood would say something like hip hop to hibbity hop to hip hop, things like that, with the whole, it's on and on and on and on, like hot, hot butter, and the crowd would say popcorn. And that was with Lovebug Starsky cutting it up. For me, going back to those origins of that word, I try to look at the definitions of words and where they come from, and that's what it means to me.
Hip-hop is a way of life. In my opinion, an advanced, evolved form of self-expression because it encompasses a variety of elements. Dance, obviously dance, music, rap, what's nowadays everyone calls spoken word. It's trendy to use it to say it that way, but it's MCing, rhyming, art. And more importantly to me, it's a tool that people use to express themselves and to rise up and counter preconceived notions that society had, in particular about blacks and Latinos. It's a source of pride because those people that they don't have to go through the commonly accepted routes to achieve growth and development personally and commercially in the world.
Let's talk about Fosse and his mentors and his or his peers, and we're talking about Valentine as well. These cats saw a vision. They were inspired, just like most people who don't come from the culture. They come into something and they want to take what they saw, right? Which is fine, and they do it, and they become a hit. And what happens is that it becomes so popular that people forget where it started at. They begin to believe their hype as if it was them who elevated this particular thing. They're now called, these are the cats who modernize jazz, or they're the modern voice of it, and they never say, it was this guy. It was this guy. I was inspired by this guy. Only with the African diasporic people that mainstream culture, let's call it Western culture, feel they can just come in, learn whatever history orally, write it, or record it, and redefine it. We can never go and do that to someone else's culture that's not from that, from our culture. They would be on us so hard about that. Where'd you get your information from? And la 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 la. They can do it. They can start their schools up. They can do whatever and say, hey, this is what we do.
Just like hip-hop is a concept, it's a marketing tool, okay? That's exactly what it is. Because anybody that want to sell something, I'm hip-hop, okay? When you say, I'm hip-hop, and you want to sell, something, support hip-hop, you know what I'm saying? And they finish rapping, and they tell you, oh, go buy my CD, I'm hip-hop. No, that's a marketing tool for you to go buy their product. You understand what I'm saying? It's a concept. Hip-hop is a concept. What I live is a cultural coming together. It's an actual, what they want to sell as what hip-hop was founded on is what I actually live. But then they will sell you a CD and say, support hip-hop. Because I got to put my kids through college. I'm sorry, no one person is hip-hop.
In order to teach hip-hop, you have to teach the foundation of it. And the foundation are the bounces. And there are 4 bounces that I've found to be very particular to hip-hop dancing. And they are what I call the deep bounce, they're what I call the boxer's bounce, or the march, and the step bounce. 4 basic bounces that I've seen, all the dances use one or some combination of those 4 bounces. Pertaining to hip hop, it's an attitude in how people live. You know, it's this whole thing of whatever we do, it has to be cool. The interesting thing about that is, like, I think that hip hop coming from a place that it comes from with the inner city youth, there tends to be this idea of once it gets out into the masses that it's no longer cool.
A lot of people feel that the hip hop is theirs now. I mean, because they doing it and they're influenced by it. They think that it's theirs, and they think that they don't need American culture anymore.
So they only doing what they see. They're not creating it. That's the difference.
In fact, I don't mind if the jazz people take some hip-hop movements, but I hate that they're calling what they're doing the new style of hip-hop, because they don't dance any hip-hop. Like, if one of them would stop thinking that because they can learn something that they're dancing, because just because they can learn doesn't mean they're dancing hip-hop, because 90% of them can't freestyle. And true hip-hop comes from who's doing it in the circle. So I hate when they say, oh, we're doing the new style hip-hop. That's old school. No, it's not. The hip-hop has never left. You guys are doing jazz and then trying to add some hip-hop flavor to it to make it your own so you can do it and so the mass public can do it.
You know, anytime that you have a foreign culture adopt another culture and then dominate what that culture is or define it, it's going to change the perspective for people who don't know about the culture. Always that's going to happen because they don't. There's always a missing link, and the missing link is you are not from that culture. Culture fully. We barely understand English in American culture, and we're from it. You understand what I'm saying? So it's arrogant to think that you can go in somebody else's culture and understand it to the point that you can redefine it and tell people what to do with it. So the point is, Western culture adopts hip-hop culture. They're adopting it and then regurgitating it with their own language and understanding and defining it out. Yeah? And there are some words that are hip-hop. There's some movements that are hip-hop. But rest assured, there's a Western construct, a Western consciousness that's driving it.
I think that happens with hip-hop, and the thing that I would like to find out is how does that leave behind a lot of information that we can find out about ourselves and our identity and how we communicate with others.
Well, I'm from Portugal, and well, hip hop over there as a culture it's really like wide accepted by like the younger audience. Like the younger people, but not so much by, like the older people. It's, I wasn't recognized as an artist, like people would not recognize what I was doing up to the point where I would go to the bank and they almost refused to open an account for me you know, because they were like, wait, but what's your job? And I'm like, well, I'm a dancer, choreographer. Oh, okay. What's your profession? And I'm like, yeah, I'm a dancer. I dance and I choreograph, and that's what I do. You know, so it's like two different worlds living over there, but hopefully it's growing and it's getting more and more accepted with time, you know. Yeah.
Me being from London, I think now it's more of a time where it's acceptable, but it is more for the, as you said, the younger generation for fun. Like people come and do classes to have fun. It's not anything that is taken too seriously, which I'm guessing now at this time is a good thing, because before, you know, you'd say, yeah, I'm into hip hop, I'm into this, and then you get all the negative stereotypes that people associate with it. Like you say, yeah, I like hip hop. So, oh, you mean you must like, you know, rap music, and you must like taking, you know, smoking this and doing that. You just get, it was associated with negative image. But now it's kind of lighthearted. You go to class, you teach to a hip hop track, it's got swearing in it. No one's gonna be like, oh my God, he just said the N-word. So it's chilled out now.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm from Switzerland, and yeah, it's quite the same. Anyway, Switzerland's rich, so I mean, they're a neutral country. There's nothing but political. It's more about fun. That's it. And for me, it's a job. I mean, it's I live out of that. So.
I'm from Italy, but I live in a very small town. Hip hop is not so known as a political movement, or we just see hip hop like a way of dancing, a way of dress. So my class is really just for fun. In Italy, you know, we have everything to have fun. We are always smiling. So.
Yo, my name is Hollow Dreams. That's HOLLOW Dreams with a Z. And for short, just Dreams. I represent EO Squad. I'm a crump dancer. I started off with a lot of hip hop, tap, modern, contemporary, ballet. I did like a little bit of popping. I didn't really feel it out much. B-boying. I felt like I couldn't really stick to it because like that's old school. And a lot of people, that's their thing. It's like you cannot, it's hard to recreate something that other people already built on. It's like to them, like it's hard. It's like you'll forever live in that shadow. And I felt like I became a crump dancer because it was something fresh, something new, and it's something I can also like connect with because it's so aggressive. It's a dance style. It's all about like expression, like force, aggression, and it's such an explanation to it that it's like you can do what you want. Like I just basically, it's like you break the rules, like just like hip hop did when they said hip hop wasn't a real dance. That's what crump is. Crump is the next hip hop. I don't categorize it with hip hop, but you would if you saw it. The steps, the contemporary explanation, the modern form, and like the African like the praise dancing. They got with b-boy, you know, b-boy now is like everything's been done, to a point, to an extent. It's like, oh, Rocksteady, Crazy Legs. They was like the originators, people that put their name in stone, and some people after them. You get that little bit of that sun, that little light. You come out now, you cannot compete. That's origin right there. That's original.
My name is Bradford Ramlow. I am the creative director of Projected Arts. I am from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I am a hip hop dancer, among other things. Man, hip hop. Well, to me, hip hop is. It first started with the music. I heard Biggie and Pac and Sugar Hill Gang, Nas, Wu-Tang Clan when I was growing up, but I didn't really live where those things were going on. At that time I was living in Southern Oregon. It was a very sheltered white community. I didn't dance at the time. I played soccer. but there was something about the music that really intrigued me. There was a really interesting dynamic to hip-hop music that I didn't understand, and so for me, being a curious kid, all I wanted was to listen to it and try to understand more. So for me, it was the music that really started. I remember the first time I got the Sugar Hill Gang original, like 14.5-minute track of Rapper's Delight. I wrote down every single lyric to that song, and I think a lot of it too was I always considered myself a very good writer, and so I saw the artistic quality in the rhymes and the poetry that these cats were performing, regardless of the fact that it didn't have anything to do with my lifestyle and my circumstances growing up. I recognized the value in the aesthetic quality at a pretty young age. I think I saw my first dance video of Rocksteady when I was 13 or 14, and one of the guys in the video was Mr. Wiggles, and so I looked at it. I don't even remember back in the day what resources we used. Because now you just YouTube whoever. I think I heard that he was in an Usher video. I think it was like My Way or whatever. And so I waited up till late at night to watch MTV, when all they did was show music videos, and there he was. He was in the middle of the My Way video during a cypher. He was doing a moonwalk on his knees. I was like, word. So that's when I started to pay attention to hip hop dancing. But now we have to backtrack, because at this point in the game, that wasn't necessarily hip hop dancing. That was the commercial interpretation of what hip hop was thought of to be and what was selling as hip hop. And that's where we get into a very gray area of, okay, well, where does the original hip hop stop? Stop the party jams, the rock, where does that stop, and where does the choreography start? Where does it become street jazz versus popping? The original popping style is the hitting of the wrist, right? Boom, 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 boom. Those movements are popping movements. They're original hip hop moves. But you put that with this, boom, boom, boom. Okay, I just did the pop with a boogaloo roll, turned it to the other side, but I didn't do it the way, the original boogaloos would have done it. I did it my own way. So, to me, hip hop dance then becomes a transition. It's constantly in motion. It's constantly evolving. And because white people like myself were listening to the music, were watching these videos, even though we weren't living in the Bronx or living in LA or living in Fresno or living in places where hip hop was developing, we were still influenced by it, and we were still creating our own interpretations of that. And whether that's authentic or not, I don't know. I don't think I'm in a position to answer that question. Dance styles of hip hop. Whether or not that makes me hip hop or not, again, I don't think that's a question that I'm trying to answer. I identify myself as hip hop. I identify with the movements, the style, the music. So I hope that's enough.
Well, teaching workshops is a funny concept to me, because in terms of hip hop, I don't think the idea of a workshop works that well. Workshops are something that, okay, if we're learning at a studio. And then for whatever weekend, some master instructor comes in and teaches. Normally how that would work in, say, for a ballet class, for example. The students have been getting ballet, you know, the correct terminology, the correct movement, yada, 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 as they're growing up, so that when this master instructor comes in, he doesn't have to teach them the terminologies or vocabulary or their technique. They already have that with the teacher that they're with. So he can come in and give a workshop and do some choreography or combination or whatever to help enhance that. With hip hop, that's not really happening because there's this idea that these kids know the movement and they don't. When they're using this hybrid of, you know, lyrical or ballet or modern, and maybe they'll sprinkle a little bit of hip hop on there. But for the most part, you know, the choreographers are coming in and they're giving their idea of choreography, which is fine, but the students aren't trained in it, and they're not going home back to their, you know, their studios and getting the information. So they're just, the workshop is only that day. And to me, it's not really useful. You're paying a whole bunch of money to learn some choreography, but that's really not helping you as a dancer. It's just that one person, and if you don't understand their technique or what they've learned, it really doesn't help you, except for, you know, have some fun that day, maybe let loose a little bit. But in that sense of a workshop in hip hop, to me, it really doesn't work.
The focus of my classes actually is been something that I've been taught ever since the beginning of my career 8 years ago, is how to build stamina and how to breathe. No matter what choreography I do, whether it's groove, chill, or explosive, I always try to build on stamina and condition my dancers that are in there to how to be funky and explosive, but breathe in the middle of it. I feel you can execute a number, execute a tour, a music video, you can put your fullest into it, but you are going to be completely exhausted by the end of it if you do not condition yourself to breathe properly and actually be good to your body. I've taken on a different aspect. Instead of just the performing side, I want to dig deeper and take it back to the technical side of things and know that, geez, looking up to MC Hammer back in the days, those kids try to do those routines compared to now where it's just a little bit in the pocket, gang, gang, gang. Back in the day, that was all cardio, and I think I missed so much of that, and I influence my classes that way and focus on building up stamina and conditioning and breathing. I love to incorporate in my classes and turn it into is all the foundation of what hip-hop and technique and dance and performance are, and just kind of mesh it into one big pot of gumbo. I was never streetwise to what hip-hop really was back in the day because I started at a very late age. So if someone who is an originator would sit there and turn around and actually tell me that my class is more of a commercial-based hip-hop industrial, I will respect that. It's kind of hard for me to turn around and say that my class is actually hip-hop because I know it doesn't reach the foundations of what hip-hop is, popping and locking and so much house and the techniques of what to do. I don't incorporate that in my class because I'm not an originator of that. I've never trained under that. So from what I've learned from the music videos and the stages and the different choreographers that I was exposed to, I would definitely say that I'm more of a commercial street funk. I wouldn't necessarily say hip hop because I always, you get two different worlds of that. You get people that say, oh, just because it's a hip hop song, they can do the routine to it and it's a hip hop number. I have a different opinion on that. Anybody can dance to a hip hop song. You can do a lyrical number to that. It depends on how you're viewing it and how you want to adapt to what hip hop really is. You can either say that it's a feeling and it's not a category and it's the feeling of what the music's giving to you that has that stereotypical hip hop flavor to it, or you can say that it's just a class that's outside of jazz, lyrical, tap, and ballet. Anything else categorized by that has any kind of execution or more R&B, more underground, more, you know, if there's any kind of, as they'll say, street dance to it, they'll just categorize as hip hop. It's a safer bet, it's just a category. I don't really like to categorize it because hip hop, again, is the feeling that you express through movement, but I do definitely respect the originators. It's hard because the young generation that we teach, they're seeing so many different aspects of hip hop, and I will definitely agree. I'll look at a class and be like, it's not really hip hop.
I feel that any person who likes hip hop culture, in general, dance in particular, should study a little bit African culture and dance in particular. just as if you are focusing on ballet, you study the traditional dances, going back to the court dances when the jester danced for the king in the court. We, at one point back in the day, remember everybody say, yo, peace to the Middle East. Remember that? Yo, peace to the Middle East. Well, where exactly is the Middle East? I mean, the southern part of it, depending on what geographical aspect you're looking at it, or the northern part of it sits in Africa, you know? So I'm not trying to start a political thing, but at some point, when you understand the breadth of Africa as a continent and what different geographic locations have contributed to dance, to culture, to things that we take for granted in our present society, I think you do yourself a great service by studying not just dance but culture. Anybody can get into hip hop. I'm hip hop. I like rap music. No, you like rap music.
Most of us, or the youth now, they're not aware that they're getting regurgitated hip hop, i.e., oh, I'm going to a hip hop class. The hell, anybody? When I was 14, the first time I thought like somebody class, I was like, class? Who goes to class to learn how to dance? So that whole thing is just a Western construct that we have to go to class to learn how to dance.
You know, there's this other confusion where people are saying new style. You know, you go into these classes and it's like, well, this is a new style class. The reason the term new style came about was because of a documentary in 1992 called Wreck and Shop that heavily influenced dancers in Japan and in France. And amazingly enough, these two groups of dancers from two different countries began to shorten this term and say, we want to dance like the New York dancers by saying we're going to do the new style, meaning New York style, dancing like the kids dance in New York. And that's where that came from. How it began to be so popular amongst the dancing community as a whole, as meaning choreography, I'm not sure, but I've talked to dancers around the world and they all pretty much say the same thing, oh, it's choreography. And again, choreography is not a style of dance. And most people are learning choreography and not how to dance, which is why you'll hear many times that people say, well, I can't go into a circle. I don't know how to do that. Going into the circle affirms that you are learning this language of movement, right? That you can speak and share this with others. It's no different than learning a language. So if I'm learning Spanish and I can now hold a conversation with some people, that shows that I am understanding the grammatical structure or the syntax or what have you. The dance is the same way in that sense. As you learn the dance and you learn how to let go of what's inside of you and bring that forth, then you begin to improv. You can enter a circle.
Like last week I had to tell a dude, like, yo, look, we take this serious. I said, it's not a game when you coming from a group of dancers. Right. You know what I mean? Right. I said, you know what I mean? Most of these cats, they ain't willing to play around with you. I said, I'm talking to you like a regular person, like a human being. Look, step off to the side. You know what I mean? Do what you got to do.
But listen, there's all this dance floor. There's all this dance floor. We right here. It's apparent. We here. We rocking here. You got all over there. All of you want to get your grind on. Why you got to be on the I don't get it. It's like, what? Like, you ain't just coming to the club and we rocking, got a cipher, and you just gonna come in there and play.
Number one, the circle is, just handed down from traditional culture. The circle is protection. From that circle, you can see your enemies coming at any side. From that circle also gives spirit of love and support, which means that you're all facing each other. You have to look each other dead in the eye. There's a lot to say when you look a man or woman in the eye, directly in their eye. You know what I mean? You see the souls of people in that way. When the person's in the center, they're supported by everybody's love. Everybody, that moment, you are the focus of the whole deal. It's all about you. And you're being supported. Everybody from your back to whatever, everyone's watching you. When you get back into the circle, you're part of the group, the collective, and you'll still want to be supported. There's never not a part where you're not being supported. There's no hierarchy in the circle. You can't tell where the beginning starts or the ending ends.
But when I came to New York and I saw the circle, that's when I knew, really, like, yo, everybody in there had their own individual style, and everybody was really representing who they were as a person. Like, sometimes when I was in the other little cities around the way, you see people just mimicking what they know, not really finding who they are. So that's what really inspired me to say, yo, I want to create my own stuff. I want people to know Bobby, not just the kid from Boston. So the circle's everything, because that's where you really can let loose and be like, yo, look what I got.
Then what happens is they try to get down the wrong way. And then instead of being cool and trying to sit back and learn.
He hopped, like, we all in a circle. He just got in the circle like this.
What
He
is
started
that?
doing this.
It's like, dude.
I said, dude, I just snatched him up like, yo, man, what are you doing? You messing with everybody else's energy. You know what I mean?
They want attention.
They don't understand that. They don't understand like how we commune in that sense.
Tourists, they don't. They don't know about the vibe and communicate. Dancers communicate. Always remember that. We dance and can communicate with each other.
If you don't understand,
stay out.
My first experience with the circle was just watching. When I came to New York, I would just watch. I wasn't ready to go in. Being a dancer in another city, I could dance there and do the circles. I knew my place. I knew what I could do. But once I came to New York, for me, I was just, I want to see what's going on. I'm not ready to jump in there. And even at that time, I didn't come to New York clubs until around 88, 89. And I wasn't really known. Like I said, I would just watch. I'd be on the perimeter and seeing all this incredible stuff going down. And I would watch and I would go over in the corner and I would practice. And that's how I did every week. And it took me a while before I built up the confidence to actually step inside. But if these guys didn't know you and the girls they didn't know you that represented in those circles, they would sit you down or the line would form to get you. Like, okay, who is this person coming in our circle? And I would just watch them line up and get anybody. And it was kind of almost like your graduation into manhood, because you had to jump into the circle. At some point, you had to get in there and do your thing. And for me, that took a while. But just watching, a lot of things is going on. Circles can be very spiritual in a sense, and then sometimes they can just be open to anybody. There's the music is playing, the circles are going, but it's a really light atmosphere. So anybody can get down. They don't really mind as much. But then there's sometimes when the music changes and everything clicks for all the dancers and you're just on this high, and that circle just changed into a spiritual or sacred ground. So now it's serious. We're saying something, we're communicating with one another, and this is not a game. This is not to be played with. You go in there and you're speaking from your soul. But when that change happens, you have to really be aware of what's going on. I've seen people walk in circles and get kicked, because they're not looking or because they don't belong there at that time. And, they always have this question, why are they so angry? They're not angry. They're sharing. They're having a conversation that is understood between everybody in the circle. And like I said, it's sacred ground. And if you come in there without understanding what's going on, you just disrupted that whole energy that's going on. So the energy is up here and everybody's fueled up and fired up and they're doing their thing, and it's kind of this one-upmanship where this person goes in and, you get inspired by what they're doing and you want to take it to the next level. and the next person wants to take it to the next level. So you get this energy that's at a fever pitch, and when someone comes in and just walks in there, you just tore that energy down. You just tore that high, if you will, down, and you don't understand how important that is to those dancers. You know, people on the outside just look at it. I was like, oh, okay, I want to jump and I want to do that. No, but there's a dialogue happening here, and if you don't understand this language, you really can't communicate with anybody, so you're perceived as this outsider. You know, and then also just for the dancers in there, it's when you get to show and prove. It's when you get to say, yeah, I've been doing this. I've got mine on this. Or, you know, it's that test of manhood, if you will, you know, where the young cat who's been practicing on the side can finally come in and earn his props and get the respect of his peers that he now belongs to this tribe.
Very few people, like the Madonnas, the Prince, who get it. And they're a rare thing within the culture. Like, they may have been born in the wrong culture, and they really are those people. You know what I mean? And they really are hip-hop. They really are coming from the punk rock. They really are these people, even though they're not from that culture or were born in it. Their spirit is there. Very few people are that way. You know, there's corporations defining what hip-hop is for them. And what it's all about, money. And that's really what it is. And I think there's a big faction who understand that, and we, that faction, are, you know, fighting a battle, a war, if you will.
Yo.
It's kind of an open-ended question. Hip-hop can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, because that's such a general question, because now you're talking about the culture in its entirety. You know, I think you're talking about what DJing or music might mean to somebody, or graph, or MCing, or what have you. My focus is a little bit more on hip-hop dancing, and for me, I think there are two concepts of that. There's b-boying, which is considered hip-hop's first dance, and then there's the actual party dances. So for me, if somebody's asked, you know, what is hip-hop dance? It is the party dances that are done to not just particular hip-hop records, but just the party dances that come out from the 80s to now, whether it's the WAP or the Running Man or the Jerry Lewis, the Smurf, or it's more current dances like the SpongeBob or the Stanky Leg or the Dougie. That's what hip-hop dance is.